Great. So yeah, changing from a moderator hat to a founder pitch hat, I wanted to give all of you a review or an understanding of what Metatron is. Giving some history, during hard lockdown, I was approached by a European banker, and at the time he was looking to fund projects. During that process, that difficult time, he still wanted to find projects in Africa to invest in. And basically, that was the start of a long process of understanding the investment ecosystem and how hard it can be to, meet investors, find investors, and raise funds. So from there, a product was born. And basically, we are developing a platform for validating startups and connecting them with investors. Basically increasing the rate of successful pitch engagements and for startups to find investors and deal makers, and for investors to find deal flow. We found that investors don't always have the time or the manpower to provide constructive criticism, so, or basically basic feedback. And that might also be around legal issues too. And there's no industry standard for securing and sharing basically pitch data. So our secret sauce is providing supporting startups in gaining credibility and also community reviews, and our angel score validation process as well. We compete in a growing market. Venture capital is basically a $368 billion market. And we are similar to AngelList and Seed Invest, but we offer a key differentiator with our Angel Score startup validation and the use of blockchain technology to provide security and value. So what we currently have is a prototype beta platform, small dedicated team, and initial partnerships with early stage startup founders and deal makers, and also, of course, investors. So what we're looking to raise is $2 million seed, and that is to scale our platform and expand our investor network and accelerating global outreach and product development. Yeah, thank you. If there are any questions from the audience or Namisi.
Yeah, of course, Nico. I just think personally, if you look at it from the base level, a whole lot of what we do at Metatron is based on Web3, tokenization, and the blockchain technology, and these are terms that everyone is not familiar with or even understands. So if you could just break it down in plain English, what these mean and how it helps us as Metatron do what we do in connecting startups to investment, and what does it mean to base a company on this disruptive technology moving forward?
Great question. And what we've found is a lot of people don't understand Web3. It's a pretty new jargon. It's very, scary for some. I've spoken to people for years who have wanted to invest in cryptocurrency, but they've been too scared to because it's not regulated as much. There's a lot of fly-by-night projects out there that are, pump and dump things happening. So that's all very scary stuff. So basically, as a technology, for me, the most important thing is that it provides a base of security and creates trust. And we want to leverage that without creating a purely Web3 startup. We want to leverage that exponential technology to essentially provide value to the community that we're trying to build. And we want to do away with, that scare factor and actually simplify the process. Whether, the fact that we're launching a token means basically two things. We want to raise using that token. So we want to receive value up to $2 million, as I just mentioned, at an evaluation of 20 million. But also to, in a sense, reward our community with, putting in their time and effort to review startups. So I think the language we use when we start really marketing this, and obviously this is part of the process that we're doing now with the community call, it's very important to show people that they can then use this technology very easily. We want to create a real world product from it. We don't want to create a Web3 product from it. And I think that's a key differentiator and something that a lot of companies out there haven't quite got right yet, and that a lot of them are trying to do. So that's our approach.
Yeah, I think that's a very solid approach added. Because like personally, like I had to do a whole lot of research and like reading and understanding like what tokenization is and like the dynamics behind it and like some of the things that people aren't too sure about and like have their trepidations on. Yeah, that's just what I thought about that.
Yeah, one other thing, I mean, basically how the web has basically improved over the last 20, 30 years. We used to have static websites, and then all of a sudden we had websites with databases where you could change the data on the website very easily. Then we have cloud, basically services, so data stored, securely somewhere else. And now we have the third iteration of basically data storage, which is blockchain. But then it can also be stored as value. So, one of the use cases is cryptocurrency, where storing value means that you can share value with other people. But that value, that storage can also be basically, it can be file data, it can be pitch data, it can be anything, it can be contracts. And then in that way, we as a company want to be able to assist the community in storing their pitch data and sharing it. So that's our use case for using blockchain. And then obviously later on with a token, we want to create value as well. So two value streams really.
Yeah, I hear that. And also like, this isn't like your first go at the metatron idea. Definitely you tried with it was Angel Coin, right?
Correct.
At the first, yeah.
Yeah, Angel Coin was the first. Sorry, I'm jumping in. Was there more to the question?
Yeah, there was just a bit more there. So like, could you just walk us through like what happened there and like what you learned from it and like what you think is different at your approach now?
Yeah, look, I mean, we were trying to create decentralized municipalities in Africa. So Angel Coin was going to become a utility token where people could invest in the token, obviously buy the token, and a portion of it would be given to the communities, and they would then also retain ownership in remote regions where we were going to put down power grids, where we were going to assist with schooling, where we were going to talk about healthcare and education and all of those building blocks of civilization or community, let's say. And what I learned there was it was probably too early, like real world asset tokenization hadn't come in yet, like it hadn't started in terms of process, and a lot of companies for the last few years have only started talking about it now. So learning a lot there around how to deploy that technology, and in terms of the regulatory frameworks, it wasn't very clear either. I think a lot of things are still trying to be figured out, and there's a lot of use cases around property tokenization, but more so less around tokenizing startups. My question has always been, why can't a startup be tokenized? Why can't it be like buying a voucher for Apple iTunes or Amazon? Why can't you essentially purchase tokenized portions of a startup, as someone, a man in the street, through your phone, or laptop, or whatever it may be. So I think things have still got to come some way in terms of protecting the consumer. But yeah, tokenization of real world assets is mostly around B2B businesses, where they're actually taking products that are not for the general public and tokenizing those, which also makes sense. There's a huge landscape there. And Angel Coin was the first iteration. We started with a consulting group in Germany who then said basically, Angel Coin is very old school, like Bitcoin was around from the beginning. One of their consultants said, we don't call tokens coins anymore, like you've got to think of something new. So then it became Metatron, which is, Metatron is actually, if you're thinking in a esoteric sense, he's also an archangel, like Archangel Michael or Raphael or whatever those is. And that's where the angel score algorithm came from, and angel investors, I think, is also in there somewhere. So that's how that all developed. But yeah, for me, Angel Coin was the start, and it was quite exciting to see what was possible and what is still possible. Thanks.
So do you think it was more of like a timing thing? Because I've been reading and like just learning through the community that even Investor Bay, they have like a tokenization of real estate, right? Or Invest Bay. And then also there was some I think it was Japan or either China, they tokenized a whole building.
Yes.
So how do you think like it compares, like tokenization in like those first world countries compares to like somewhere in Africa where some of that infrastructure is not there or the capital isn't there?
Yeah, look, I mean, for me, there's two things here. So Africa is ripe for innovation because things haven't been built. So there's like a chicken and egg situation, whereas in places like Japan, and I'll come back to that point in a moment, and Europe and all those things are so highly regulated. In order to do anything, it's also very tricky. And the cost of business, I think, and living expenses is also an issue. So I think for me, what I feel is that Africa has a lot of opportunity because there are people living in remote regions with great ideas. How do they then really create that paradigm shift and find enough money to and get their idea going and basically find investors and grow? If they're not part of basically a bigger community, that's online, for instance, like us. So yeah, what's important for me is that Africa is where I think a lot of bigger companies and countries want influence. Like there are so many opportunities in all types of industries. I just think that the downside is, coming back to the point of Africa, is that regulatory things are not as straightforward, and I'm sure those things can be improved. Different countries have different ideas, just the same as anywhere else. But I think, everyone's been talking around places like Singapore and Dubai. Obviously, there's a lot more money there. So there's also that level of innovation that happens when the coffers are open. I think what really needs to happen is that what, I've also been trying to work on with Metatron, and I think we as a business have been trying to do is eventually show investors that it's safe to basically invest in Africa. If it's done in the right way, if you use things like crypto rails and you use things like off ramps for fiat and things like that, from that, it's all about traceability and making sure that funds don't become misappropriated and that you can show return on investment. So I think it's very important to be able to show those things for investors, and also things like InsurTech, creating insurance products around startups and the investment in startups, I think is going to be key to that ecosystem as a whole. So there's a lot of innovation to be had, and there are great projects. I mean, I think in 2024, $4 billion went into Africa in terms of startup investment. So it's not a small thing, but it's not as big as everywhere else for those reasons. Yeah.